Greetings, M squared here. Today we're going to talk about angles in transversal problems. So the first thing we need to know is, what is a transversal? A transversal is a line that cuts across two or more lines. A lot of times in geometry you'll see two parallel lines and a transversal. So this line right here that cuts through these two is called a transversal. In geometry, you're going to learn about the names of all these kinds of angles, but we're not going to right here. We're just going to learn the concept of when a transversal crosses two parallel lines. So first of all, we're going to use our vertical lines and our vertical angles and our supplementary angles to kind of show you that if you have two parallel lines in a transversal, you can find any other angle that is there. So here we go. If this is 106 degrees, and this is a vertical angle, then we know that this also has to be 106 degrees. But you'll see that right there is a line. That means these two angles are supplementary. Those two angles are supplementary. These two angles are supplementary. These two angles are supplementary. So we have a bunch of supplementary angles. Well, how do I get, remember supplementary means 180. How do I get there? Well, 4 will get me to 110 and 7 would get me to 80, and then I would have 180. But if that one is 74 and this is also supplementary, or you could say it's vertical, then this one also is 74. So I just knew one of those angles and I found the rest of them. Now the cool thing is that when you have parallel lines, that means this transversal is actually making the same angles down here. So if you see that this is an obtuse angle, right? This is an obtuse angle, obtuse meaning bigger than 90, between 90 and 180, then if these, no, pay attention because this is important. This only works if it's parallel. It said line M is parallel to line N. And that's the way they'll be in all your problems in your homework. But if it wasn't parallel, you could not do this. It'd be a little bit different. You'd have to have another angle down here to figure out the rest of these. But since they're parallel, we know that this is 106 degrees, and then this has to be 74 degrees, and then this one has to be 74 degrees. It's vertical, right? Vertical angles and supplementary angles. So the key is one angle with two parallel lines cut by a transversal can get you any other angle. So you need to determine how are you going to figure out which angles are equal. Sometimes what I do is I look and I say, oh, well, that's an acute angle, right? These angles are smaller than those ones. And then these guys, in geometry, we use these little arcs to show things are congruent or equal. And so that's why I'm making two arcs on all the ones that are equal to 106 and one arc on all the ones that are equal to 74. What you notice is it's kind of an every other kind of deal, right? 1, 2, 3. It kind of alternates sides, and so do those other ones. If you notice those things, then this is going to be a lot easier. So let's go and see if we can find the angle they're talking about. I'll show you a couple different ways to do it. So sometimes what I do is I just look at it and I say, okay, that's 102. This one is not 102, right? That would be 78. Then all the other angles, if these are parallel, and it says that in all these problems the lines are going to be parallel, then all the other angles in this picture are either 102 or 78. So sometimes I don't even worry about, hey, go every other one. I just look at, this is a bigger angle than this one. Is this bigger or smaller? Well, it's bigger, see? So I know that that one's 102. And that one has to be 78. And this one has to be 78. And that has to be 78. So you see how I'm doing the every other kind of thing, zigzagging around. But sometimes I just look at it. And I just do the supplementary, or I didn't even need to do that here, right? Because this one was big. Okay, let's look at this one. Do you notice how this one is smaller? This is 55, so that means that one would have to be 55. So to find this one, I have to see how much I would get. These are supplementary. Well, 5 would get, I need to see how much it would take me to get to 180. So 5 would get me to 60. 20 would get me to 80, and I need 100 to get me to 180. Now these two add up to 180, and I know the value of x. So in part of your homework, you're just going to need to figure out, hey, what is that angle? And if you just notice the picture, the size of the angle, it's relatively easy. It's either going to be 55 or it's supplement. Okay, let's do a couple more. So here we go. This is obtuse, and so is this. So remember, we would zigzag, and then we would know that those are vertical angles. So that one's 146. And these two are side by side. That means they're supplementary. Well, 9 gets me 20, 60 gets me 80, and 100 would get me 169. So these two are supplementary, so that's what x would be. Now, we're going to kick it up a notch, and we're going to do this with equations. We still have to know what's equal, so that's super important. I'm going to take my little highlighter, and I'm going to show you that this one is equal to this one, because those are both bigger angles. That means these two are not equal. The only other option is they're supplementary. When you have two parallel lines, and you're talking about the angles caused by the transversal, then they're either equal or supplementary. So I'm going to write supplementary here. I'm going to abbreviate. I know that these are supplementary angles. Now look down at this picture. This is an acute angle, or smaller, and so is this one. So I know that these are equal angles. That's the symbol for angles. So in every picture, they're either going to be equal or supplementary. And depending on whether they're equal or supplementary is what kind of equation you make. So if I made an equation up here, I would say 6x minus 20 plus 6x minus 4 equals 180. That would be my equation, because they're supplementary angles, which means two angles that add up to 180. And then I would just combine like terms. So I get 12x minus 24 equals 180. And I would continue to solve. I'd add 24 to both sides. I'd get 12x equals 10204. Looks like it, right? 4. Yep, 204. And then I would divide. Where's my calculator? For some reason, I don't think that that is divisible by 12, but we are about to try. Yeah, it is. Never mind. It goes in there 17 times. And I'm just asking for x here. All right, so there's x, so I'm done. Whereas in this problem, those are equal, right? We do the opposite little thing. All of those ones would be equal, and then all the other ones would be equal. But I don't need to know the other one to find x, because if these two are equal, I say, oh, well, 7x plus 9 must equal 9x plus 5. And then I go about to solve the equation. Since the 9 is on the right side, and the 7's on this side, and I want to avoid negatives, I'm going to move the 7x over. So I'm going to get 2x plus 5 equals 9. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I get 4 equals 2x. And when I divide by 2, I get x equals 2. Okay, so the key is you have to first decide whether the angles are equal or supplementary. That's always what you're going to have to decide first. So why don't you pause and figure these out? Are they equal or supplementary? Okay, welcome back. Hope you paused. These make a straight line, right? That means they have to add up to 180. So I set up my equation accordingly. I say, oh, well, then x plus 5 plus x plus 13 equals 180. So x plus x is 2x. That's negative 8 equals 180. So if I add 8 to both sides, I get 2x equals 188. So x must equal 94, because 2 goes into there. If I divide both sides by 2, 9 times, it goes into 18. 9 times, it goes into 84 times. What about this one? Did you decide? Well, if you're not sure, you say, remember every other kind of thing going on there. Those are both smaller angles than the rest of those. So these are equal. So I'm going to set them equal to each other. 9x plus 4 equals 3x plus 16. Then I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides and get 6x. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides and get 12. So x equals 2. Okay, so the first thing when you're doing these equation ones is figure out what kind of equation you're going to make. Are you going to make an equation where two angles add up to equal 180? Or are you going to make an equation where two things are equal, two angles are equal? it's going to be one of those and only one of those. You won't have to do anything else. So supplementary or equal. Good luck. M squared signing out.